Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, we're going to be talking about all things head injuries with the co-host of the new podcast. It's called Headrush. Next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, I like to meet all our new podcasters, and we're now producing something like 190 different shows. So I don't get to meet everybody, but I got the privilege today of interviewing our brand new podcast. It's called Headrush Podcast. The two hosts are in studio, Paul Frase and Corey Berry. Guys, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you for having us.
Well, I'm so excited about this topic because it's something that I think doesn't get talked about near enough. It's finally in the headlines and people understand what CTE is. So why don't we start a little bit and talk about the goals for the show? So Corey, do you want to start?
Oh, yeah, Jeff, thank you for having me on. Goals for the show for me is hope, to bring awareness and hope and just let people know that, you know, I've never heard of anyone dying of CTE. It's not a death sentence. There's symptoms you can deal with. There's avenues you can go. I do a bunch of therapies, and I'm on a lot of different things. So there's always hope, Jeff. And I mean, that's the great thing about it all, is just to bring hope.
Paul, what's you?
Bring awareness, teach people what CTE is. Again, Corey masterfully said it. It's not a death sentence. You know, if you have had repetitive head injuries and impacts, and thousands in our cases, you know, from rodeo and professional football, probabilities you're going to have some type of depression, addiction. With the repetitive head impacts, sometimes comes very serious things like suicide ideology, executive function loss, memory loss. So, but the really thrilling area of science and neurology is there are things that we can do. There's things that we can do to take the inflammation down a level. Even things as simple as eating the right foods or taking omega-3s. When I get asked by parents now, you know, little Johnny wants to play football, you know, what do I do? Well, I've finally got to the point where flag football is not a bad thing until 14, and then if Johnny wants to still play football, absolutely, do it, put the helmet on, but take omega-3s, fatty acids like they're candy, and give yourself a fighting chance to take that inflammation down a notch in your head, in your brain. The inflammation is what causes the damage.
I want people to know you guys. So, Corey, we've got some pictures we're going to put up on the screen of your rodeo career and then some pictures from recent years. So tell us more about how long were you in the rodeo game and when did you leave it?
I rodeoed professionally in several different organizations for 9 years, and I left it in 1999 due to cognitive nerve damage and a broken neck.
Oh my goodness! And I have to imagine, is it just the jolts from riding the horse? Is it your brain is bumping up against the skull?
Well, yeah, and that's what CTE has come out and about. It's not about the concussions. I mean, I've suffered several concussions in my life, and so has Paul. Well, I don't know about several for you, but I've been knocked out and dazed and kicked in the head and but, it's all about the repeated head impacts. And so you think about it, I rode bareback broncs for 9 years professionally, and roughly $12 in 8 seconds.
Wow.
So that's 12 times my head is going.
Right.
Well, just because I'm stiff-necked and I got everything going doesn't mean my brain doesn't.
Right.
And so, I've estimated probably through my whole life, from start to finish, and not just rodeoing, but I raced modifieds and I'd done other stuff too, played football and baseball and wrestled. I'm doing a rough estimate of probably about 14 or under 14,000 repeated head impact.
Oh my goodness.
Probably 10,000.
Incredible. Paul, let's talk about your career, and we've got some pictures. In fact, maybe you can narrate the pictures as they come up. So.
Oh, yeah, the old Jets photos, yeah. And longer hair back then, too. Coming around the corner in Foxborough. Yeah, they're the glory days, right?
Hackers.
But, you were talking about the repetitive head impacts. People, when I was up in Boston University, I was in the clinical trials 8 or 10 years ago, and we were trying to find biomarkers for CTE. And they said, how many times have you been concussed? How many concussions have you had? And I said, well, I think I've been knocked out 3 or 4 times. And then they said, how many times have you seen the color purple, seen stars, had dizziness just for a split second? And they listed like 10 or 12 things. And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, those are subconcussive hits. That's what we're talking about, repetitive head impacts. CTE is not a 1 or 2 or 10 concussions. It's repetitive head impacts. And they have put sensors on helmets, and they now know it's between 1,000 and 1,500 repetitive head impacts per season. I played 11 years professionally. I played 5 years in college, and I played 4 years in high school. So you do the math. Thousands. I thought it was incredulous when I actually first added it up and said nobody's ever going to believe that I had 8 to 10,000 head impacts. That's crazy. Well, you do. You have, and that's what causes the problems down the road.
And Paul, when did you start to know that you might have been injured?
Oh, again, I was talking about the depression and apathy and so on and so forth. I had a son with a muscle disorder, and we lost our son in 2010. And people said, "Oh, are you depressed?" Well, yeah, I lost my son, but the fact of the matter is, at 47 years old, it was like a light switch turned off. The chemistry in my brain just flatlined. I was a very passionate, emotional person, and all of a sudden I became apathetic. And then I used to be, everybody gets angry once in a while, and usually you can control your anger. All of a sudden, at 47, I didn't want to control the anger, and I redlined 0 to 60 in a nanosecond, and I didn't care. And things changed, and I noticed it. And so 6 months later, I was in those clinical trials to find biomarkers for CTE, and I started learning about CTE, and I started understanding what it is. And I said, okay, if there's an opportunity, if I'm not past the point where I'm cognitively unable to control my emotions or control the situation, I'm in trouble. Can I do it? And yes, I could do it. So, and definitively, I can't say I have CTE. Nobody can who's still breathing and their heart is pumping. But a lot of the testing from Boston University, 346 out of 375 deceased NFL players showed CTE. Now, the lead researcher will say that's a biased sample because the guys that were sampled, the family members said, hey, he was acting the fool the last 10 years of his life. You need to study his brain. So who knows what that, 91.7% is 346 out of 375, but what's the real percentage?
Right.
30%? Even 20%? Maybe 50%, but it's... Well,
So, and I know you guys just started the podcast. What are some things you want to talk about on the show? Are you going to have guests on the show? What's the plan?
Well, matter of fact, one of our very first episodes that we're having, you probably don't even know this yet, Jeff, but we got Dr. DeMeo flying in tonight.
Wow.
And we got her and Dr. Mark Gordon coming on our podcast. And Dr. DeMeo is our doctor.
Wow.
And does the Mark Gordon protocol. And I don't know if you know who Mark Gordon is.
I've heard the name, so tell me more.
Yeah, Quiet Explosions,
Yes,
Andrew Marr. He works with veterans.
he's only been on Joe Rogan, 5 or 6 times.
That's amazing.
I think he just
Yeah.
filmed with him.
Well, congratulations. You're getting these kind of top-notch stars, and I see nothing but success. Why don't we end with kind of some words of hope and affirmation for the people who might be watching this who are struggling with something?
You go first.
Well, I would, action steps. When I watched the movie Quiet Explosions, I watched that movie, and I've watched it 7 times already. Every time I have that good, warm, fuzzy feeling that if I ever get CTE or if I ever have neurological damage or issues, there is hope. There is modalities. There are therapies. There are things that you can do. We were just talking about today's professional football player. They make so much money. They should have a hyperbaric chamber in their house. They should do TMS. They should do everything proactively to get the inflammation out of their head, because the sport is never going to be safe, never. And I don't care how safe you make the helmets, the head, the brain is still going to rack on the front and the back of your skull, and there's jagged edges in the skull, and I didn't realize that.
Wow, me either.
So that brain that is the consistency of butter,
Wow.
tends to get damaged.
Corey, we'll give you the final word. What would you like to leave the audience with?
Well, Jeff, I'm big on hope and I'm big on awareness. If you think you possibly got this disease, or if you are having some neurological issues and you played competitive sports, contact sports, soccer, hockey, it don't matter, that there's places you can go. I've seen the best doctors that there are. I'm part of Boston University. I'm part of the Glenn Briggs Institute at UT Health San Antonio. I am actually diagnosed traumatic encephalopathy syndrome, probable CTE. And so with that, I seek help. I got MRIs. I went and done everything I could possibly do to find out what's going on in my head, because my head ain't right. I've lost executive function. I've lost motor skills. I got rage. I've even had suicidal thoughts, and actually pulled my horse out into a round pen and just hunkered around him and just prayed to God to keep me from doing this. And so you look at that, there's hope. I've got medical professionals. I'm on the Mark Gordon protocol through Dr. Mizell DeMeo in Florida. I go to vestibular rehab. I got a speech therapist in Fort Worth, a neurologist. It takes a village.
Yes.
It really does. I'm a little bit further along than Paul is on the spectrum of the scale. But with the village, there's hope. And with the good Lord above and the people that I surround myself with, there's hope. And I'll tell you what, the most important person in my life is my wife. And so, I mean, all of that comes into meaning. And so I just want to leave with hope. You know, get help. Go get tested. I'm about ready to get on you about all of this. It needs to be done. You need a village.
This is going to be a wildly popular show, and I can't thank you enough for having the courage to put it out there. So, guys, thank you so much. We're going to end with your Facebook page so people can start subscribing to the show, and just many blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.